Good morning, Bearcats. How you doing? Today is a big day in history, and in reflecting on September 11th, 2001, I remember that day vividly.
That there's any kind of an effort up there yet. Now remember, oh my God.
Oh my God.
That looks like a second plane.
Dad, what is that falling? Is that a person?
Where?
Oh my God, falling.
Directly, perhaps purposefully, into, oh my goodness.
Oh God.
There's another one. Oh my goodness, there's another one.
This seems to be on purpose.
Oh my goodness, now it's obvious, I think, that there's a team set off. When you see the old demolitions of these old buildings, it folded down on itself and it is not there anymore.
That should be it.
It has completely collapsed.
The whole side has collapsed?
The whole building has collapsed.
So my name's Troy Webster. I'm a captain here with Florence Fire EMS. I've been with Florence for going on 23 years.
When 9/11 happened, did you ever think that you would be called to go?
Actually, I didn't. So I was actually here. I worked, at that time I was in training, so I was working on September 11th when everything happened, and we were watching it kind of unfold in front of us. And at the time, I really didn't think that it was going to be a problem that was going to impact the entire nation. And when Ms. Schutzman asked me last year to come in and talk to the school, because it was the 15th year anniversary, when she asked me to come in, I said absolutely. And that was probably the first time, because I had talked to other groups, organizations, that was probably the first time that it was like, oh my gosh, I'm talking to people that wasn't even born.
Yeah.
It's kind of like me with Pearl Harbor. I don't have nothing. So that was a tough one because at the time, my daughter Emily, she was just learning to walk. So, you know, going up there, I know how much they could have used the help, but also this was a huge milestone in her life. That was tough. Actually, she started learning 2 days before we left. So let me tell you all a little bit about the background of how I went up. So not only here, but you also have the Pentagon, and then you have in Somerset, Pennsylvania, where the plane crashed. And a good friend of mine who's a Cincinnati firefighter, he actually reached out to a battalion chief in New York, and they got talking to him. He said, look, we could use the help. If you want to come up and help us search through, we'd love to have you come up. So he and I went up the first week of October, so we're a month into it. There's a couple of guys that I knew through training that were killed on 9/11. So this was one of our guys that we would go to and take training classes with, and we knew him through our association of training and friendship of that way. So reaching out to him, he's like, yeah, we want you to come up. Working. And my first impression was I really had no words to describe the magnitude and the size of this. Again, a picture really doesn't do it any justice. As far as you can look left, and as far as you can look right, and as far as you can kind of look out into the horizon, there's nothing but destruction. And all of the recovery effort, it's no longer a rescue. We'll typically live past 21 days. So now we're beyond that. We're into the recovery phase. So we know we're there searching for, you know, missing or lost loved one. The smells of the fire still burn. The fire is burnt until December of that year, because you got to remember there's 110 floors that collapsed into what is about a 7-story. It was about 7 stories tall, but it's all down in the ground, compressed down underground where the cars were parked, the parking area. So they had to kind of just sift through that with the crane. And I know it's kind of morbid to talk about, but even small things like bone fragments, because for some people there was nothing left. We had this ginormous warehouse of all these personal artifacts that people have never come back to recover. The one thing that everybody would see, it was a cross they found laying. It was like the perfect dimensions of a piece of steel. And here I'm going to show you a piece of steel from one of the towers that we have incorporated into our firehouse. But so when workers would come in and out, they would see that walking in. and you never felt like that you were going to fall through. You could see way down. You could take your light and you could see way down to these void spaces. But I never felt unsafe there. A lot of people probably forget about the anthrax outbreak, the white powdery substance. The outbreak started in the Rockefeller Plaza where NBC News was.
What have you taken back?
So part of what I wanted to share with my experience is that terrorist activity wasn't just locally, it's globally, and it's changed. Think about how you guys have flown on an airplane. You probably wouldn't remember what it was like prior to 9/11. There was really no security. These events where the security and everything is changed our lives and trying to make things more safer because of what happened on 9/11. Fire service, we get millions of dollars of grant money for some of the equipment because of that, because of Homeland Security. You also have to remember that the Department of Homeland Security was developed because of 9/11. CIA, the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security really flourished shortly after 9/11 to get things in place to try to make things safer here. With that, there's grant money available for us to have updated equipment, updated hazardous materials equipment. To put things in perspective, a lot of people go, oh, I wonder how tall that is. The tallest building in Cincinnati, if you double it, it's still not even as tall as the towers were. And the width, double the size of the base of it to make it equal. So it's basically taking those buildings, putting them side by side, and then putting two more on top, and then half of those buildings. We found a civilian, we found a firefighter, and they found a body or a body part. All this stopped. Then that's what we call a soaks basket. That right there. So they would take one of those in, they would recover the body, they would drape a flag over it, and then they would remove the body. So if it was a firefighter, the American flag, drape it over it, and then they could identify who this company was. They would have called the guys at that firehouse and say, hey, we recovered. All the guys would go down there, carry his body out, take him to the ambulance. And these cadaver dogs. Dogs have emotions too, right? Take a rescuer, and they were they were actually found somebody who was alive. So that kept them continually. They have their own little hospital. It's set up strictly for the dogs. And they had hundreds of pairs of boots for the dogs that were walking on the concrete. They forgot a lot of these dogs, the dog breeds are. So this is a restaurant. So the one thing, obviously, see, businesses can't stay open. So they had to close the doors. But they weren't necessarily impacted to the point to where they weren't able to do something in some capacity to help. Here, this restaurant here, Nino's, they closed. They opened to give and serve food every night to all of the people that were helping. So I'll show you this picture. This was a church that was a few blocks away from Ground Zero. This church is just a few blocks away. Every building around, there was dust, there were things broken, everything. Like every building was impacted. Nothing was broke, nothing was touched, no headstone was overturned, nothing. It was like
I was teaching at Connor High School.
I was 20 years old and I was a college student.
I was a sophomore at Michigan State University and I was meeting with my academic advisor.
I was sitting in 7th grade science class, Miss Simpson's class.
Teaching health class to my 7th grade.
Teaching at Holy Cross at the time. And the time the first plane hit, I believe it was a little after 9 o'clock. No thought of terrorism entered my mind.
Being 12 years old, I don't think I understood the impact of what had just happened.
My wife and I are expecting our first child, and I was kind of thinking, what kind of a world are we bringing our kids into?
It felt like World War III had started. It was the first time as an American that I did not feel safe.
The Twin Towers have been hit. The Twin Towers have been hit.
We sat in front of our TV until dark.
This was kind of a shock to my small world at the time.
I think everybody, including 7th grade students, were in just kind of shock.
The name of Brian Williams was in the North Tower and perished in the North Tower.
We saw the worst and the best all in one day.
There was not a single party, not a single person going out.
9/11 definitely has left a mark on my soul and the souls of many other people.
And as you can tell, still a little emotional. Thank you, Y Club, for taking the time to pull this video together.